The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Week 15 updated rankings injury report. If you want to see the complete list of the updated rankings, hit the comment section, hit the description, or just go to dkplaybook.com. They're up there where they were earlier in the week, but now they're updated, full of all the injuries that I'm talking about. And remember, I'll be live on Sunday morning to get a final look at the rankings and all of the injuries, plus picking all the games and taking your viewer questions. 10 a.m. Eastern Time, DraftKings YouTube channel, my Facebook page, my Periscope, my Twitter, or the DK Live app. Be there for that. Or if you just want to get into a draw for $20 DK dollars, maybe that's the only reason that you're here. Give the episode a like. That's step one. Step two, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section. Let me know which player you are depending the most on this week to outperform what his projections are. So it's like Marcel Aitman. I need him to score like 20 points, something like that, whether it's on your DraftKings team, your season-long fantasy team, because it's the playoffs. And frankly, with a lot of these injuries, you might be forced into playing some uncomfortable players this week. So I want to know who that is. And remember to vote for Video of the Year and to vote for me by doing that. Again, the link is in the description. It's in the comment section. Or if you just go to fsta.org/votevideo, you will find me there with Tim Andercust embarrassing him at the NFL Combine, or at least a mock NFL Combine, which they had at the Super Bowl. It's a fun vid. I recommend everyone go check it out. But I recommend more that people just vote for me. You don't need to watch the video. You can just go vote. And you can vote as many times as you want. So I recommend that everyone go do that too. Just every day go back, another vote for the PME. I would be much appreciated on that front. Let's get to the injuries, starting with the Saturday night games. The first one is Isaiah Crowell has been placed on IR. He is done for the season. Quincy Enunwa will not play either. So Elijah McGuire is going to be the highest ranked of the Jets running backs. He'll get involved in the passing game a little bit because he's also dealing with an ankle injury. Trenton Cannon's also dealing with an injury. So you would expect to see almost like a 75-25 split between the two, with the 75 going to McGuire. He is untrustworthy against a really good run defense, but if you need a flex and someone that's going to get touches, then Elijah McGuire, Lizzie McGuire, may be the guy Robbie Anderson I have ranked the highest, and he is somewhat playable, actually, of all the Jets receivers, so you can take that. Kiki Cutie on the other side of the ball for the Texans is going to be out. That does leave room for DeAndre Hopkins to absorb a lot of the market share of targets. He got a ton of targets last week. Didn't really translate into anything until late when he caught the touchdown, but he is the only Texans receiver that I would start. I'm not really looking at Demaryius Thomas whatsoever. Hell, they were playing Joe Webb last week at receiver. So Hopkins only with Kiki out. In Indy, this is the big one. We're going to the Saturday games now. With Indy, T.Y. Hilton hasn't practiced all week with an ankle injury. Frank Reich said he'll see how he responds in the next 24 hours, and we are expecting Dontrell Inman to be back. So if Hilton plays, I am playing him. I'm not worried about the ankle injury. If I go down with the ship, I go down with the ship. I'm not leaving that sort of stability and upside on my bench because I'm worried about an injury. Now, fortunately, this is a 1 o'clock game, so we'll know before the game starts. If there is no T.Y. Hilton, now we got a real problem because I have no clue who it's going to be for the Indianapolis Colts that you'd want to start. My hunch tells me if Inman is active, it's going to be him. After him, it would be Zach Pascal. I think they'll try to sacrifice Ryan Grant to the best of their abilities to Jones as the horrible matchup. Chester Rogers might get some slot work. So for me, it would be Inman, then Zach Pascal, and then Chester Rogers, then Ryan Grant. Obviously, this is going to funnel a lot of targets towards Eric Ebron. You're playing him anyway. It's not a great matchup, but someone should be able to get open and see a lot of targets if Hilton is out. All of these guys, by the way, the 4 Colts receivers, are all below $4,000 on DraftKings this week. So if it's me, you can tune into the DraftKings ownership show I did with Jeff Ulrich where we talked through this in a bit more detail, but I would prefer Inman if he plays the most, and then Zach Pascal, and I'll probably chop up my exposure between those guys if I want to get access to the very high-end running backs because it's hard to pay down at a lot of positions this week, and one of these Colts receivers could be a big boom if you get the one in the right spot, and it might be some guesswork, but there is upside to be had if T.Y. Hilton does miss this game. In Pittsburgh, this is a problem. James Conner returned to practice on a limited basis this week from his leg injury. It wouldn't be a problem if it was a 1 o'clock game, but it's not. So there are so few options you have to insert in. Obviously, a lot of people are counting on Jalen Samuels this week, both in season long and for DraftKings. And all of a sudden, if Connor is active and we don't know until after the 1 o'clock game start, it might render a lot of your lineups inert. So you really need to keep on top of this and make other plans. The best move is always putting them into your flex spot because of the later games. If you don't know, that just gives you more outs, more options to switch onto should anything happen. So I'd say it's like 50-50 that James Conner plays. He'd be a top 10 running back for me this week if he plays. He's actually in a glorious matchup, a glorious situation. I don't think that they would be bringing him back just to give him 50% of the snaps. Let him rest if that's going to be the case, because if he's not able to go full speed, you probably don't even want him out there anyway. If Samuels is the starter and James Conner is inactive, I like him as a top 10 play. So whichever one is the starting is the one that you want to play. You don't want to play the other one, but it's a really tricky situation with that game being at 4 p.m. Eastern time that we're just not going to know. So best of luck to you. I wish I had more insight. Hopefully we've learned some of this news on Saturday or Sunday morning. It just comes out. You have no problems making your lineup decisions, but come on, it's the Patriots versus the Steelers. They're not going to let us off the hook that easy with the fantasy playoffs on the line. There's a lot at stake here, so keep an eye on that and just have outs. Game plan ahead. Put yourself in the right situation to really attack this should it happen. If you have James Conner, well, you're going to have to wait it out because you're going to want to play him. He's probably the reason you're in the playoffs to begin with. You're going to want to roll him out there if he is active for this great matchup. With Detroit, Kerryon Johnson has been ruled out. Bruce Ellington and his hamstring problem also ruled out. I discussed Andy Jones, who saw the second most amount of wide receiver snaps last week against Arizona. You'd expect Kenny Golladay to be locked down with Tre'Davious White, that Andy Jones might be a guy that you could turn to, not in season long because there's enough options, but for DraftKings purposes, he's the absolute stone min at $3,000. First touchdown upside potential as well for Andy Jones. Theo Riddick is probably the only one in the Lions backfield you'll want to play. With Blunt splitting time with Zenner on the ground, that's not a great situation. Maybe Theo just fills in this slot role without Bruce Ellington around like we saw earlier in the season. That's a potential, but it's nothing better than a flex at best in a PPR league. Hopefully you have better options and don't need to play any of these guys. In San Francisco, Matt Breida also got into limited practice on Friday, which would severely impact the viability of Jeff Wilson Jr., both from a season-long and DraftKings perspective. So these are some of the guys that you could actually pair with James Conner if you have them both to actually see what happens, because that Seattle-San Francisco game is the only other late game. Obviously, you have the Sunday night game and the Monday night game if you do need to pivot in season-long leagues, or at least hold out hope that one of these guys can go. I wouldn't expect Breida to play, but the guy just ends up popping up last second, being active anyway. I like Jeff Wilson as a top 20 play if Matt Breida is inactive. If he is active, I like Breida as the top 20 play. He'd be the one that you'd want in that situation. Also, Donte Pettis and Marquise Goodwin both added to the injury report on Friday with a foot and calf injury. Donte Pettis is going to be super chalky on DraftKings. I think this injury, plus just him being chalk in general, is just not a great spot that you want to be in. He is the receiver I would play from a season-long perspective, the only one from the 49ers, but if you can avoid the situation altogether, that is probably your best route this week. In Seattle, Doug Baldwin looks like he's going to play. Rashad Penny has already been ruled out, so I bumped up Mike Davis a little bit in the rankings and bumped up Chris Carson a little bit. Hopefully, this means Chris Carson can do anything in the passing game this week, but they're not giant favorites on the road. It's actually down to 3.5, which is somewhat surprising since they blew them out 2 weeks ago, but with the ground and pound that we've seen from the Seahawks, expect Chris Carson to be a top 20 play. If he can start getting involved in the passing game, he actually has significant upside here, knowing that he's probably going to take a lot of the goal line work. If you can even see 4 or 5 targets, you're looking at a potential top 10 play of the week. So I do like Chris Carson a lot. With Atlanta, Austin Hooper is dealing with a knee and ankle injury, but they have already come out and said that he is going to play, so no worries on that front. Outside of the injury, maybe that limits him, but what are you going to do with tight end other than Austin Hooper if that's who you've been playing? Go pick up some loser who doesn't play? No, you're not going to do that. Play Austin Hooper. Ito Smith, however, was added to the injury report. I've kept him in the rankings for the time being, and maybe this means more on DraftKings than it does in your season long, but if he is out, just fire up some Tevin Coleman, $4,200. He then becomes a somewhat viable play against a really weak Cardinals run defense this week too, if you're in a pinch. But as anyone who owns Tevin Coleman knows, probably still not in the fantasy playoffs, that he's not super trustworthy, but if he is going to see 85% of the snaps, he probably is worth playing as a volume number 2 running back this week. Tampa Bay, Deshaun Jackson is out with a thumb injury. Once again, 3rd straight week. It's tough to play any of the Buccaneers guys because of the matchup, but you might have to bite the bullet because the volume is going to be there for all of them. I prefer Humphreys to Godwin this week just because of the matchup. I also don't mind Cameron Brate here, just more concentrated market share for all those guys, like I mentioned, we've seen for the past 3 weeks. With Chicago, Allen Robinson and his hip injury practice in full. He's someone that you can play, but he's boom or bust. And if you get the bust, you might be done, but I think the boom is high enough for him. We've seen these big games, especially against a weaker pass defense like the Packers, and in one of the highest projected point total games of the week, actually, on Sunday, which is not saying much, but he's someone that can create a lot of long plays here if Trubisky can take advantage of it, that I think you do roll with him in lieu of better options. He's my number 1 rated Bears receiver of the week. Washington, Jordan Reed is out. Fire up some Vernon Davis if you have to. Josh Doxson, with his concussion, has yet to pass protocol as of Friday evening, but he has returned to practice. If he passes it on Saturday, he will be good to go. If not, you can play Jamison Crowder just because there's no one else to pass to on the team, and the slot you can get. Vernon Davis and Jamison Crowder patrolling the middle of the field and up the seams is where you want to attack the Jacksonville defense, and the 7.5-point underdogs and Josh Johnson at quarterback maybe being able to elude the pass rush just a little bit, buy some time, that they might have to pass like 35, 40 times in this game. So it's not the worst play in the world, not a recommended play, not like, oh my God, I need to play Jamison Crowder because Josh Doxson's gone. No, it's nothing like that. But if you need a few points, Jamison Crowder in a PPR could get you some, is all I'm saying, if Josh Doxson isn't around. With the Giants, Odell Beckham has been ruled out. Play some Sterling Shepard, and Corey Coleman, would be my second favorite wide receiver option if you needed to dig deep in a deeper league. He's almost 100% unowned, so if you had to turn to him, you can. He's the one that I like the second most in the Giants passing game. Pierre Garçon, I don't know why I have Pierre Garçon listen here. You should be listed under San Francisco, but he's out for the year with a knee injury, placed on injured reserve. Arizona, Chad Williams could be making his return to the lineup this week, but he hasn't played in like 2 months, so keep an eye on that. You're not playing him anyway, but he would take away from the market share of Larry Fitzgerald. Tajah Sharp, this is interesting because Taywan Taylor has been being used more and more and more in the passing game in a very solid matchup against the Giants. If Sharp sits, you could theoretically play Taywan Taylor this week. It's funny, we're talking about week 15, we're talking about these injuries, and you go from the really big names to Tajah Sharp, who this could be impactful because we're so late into the season, there's so few people to pick up, that Taywan Taylor, if you needed him, I would like him more than Jamison Crowder. Put it that way, I'd like him more than Corey Coleman if Tajah Sharp was to sit in this contest. With Miami, Xavier Howard is doubtful to play, so that's great news for Stefon Diggs in the Minnesota passing game. In Philadelphia, Carson Wentz is also doubtful. Count on Nick Foles starting as giant underdogs in the Sunday Nighter against the Rams. And finally, with Jacksonville again, sometimes I'll talk about kickers. Kai Forbath was signed by the Jags. Josh Lambo is real iffy to play. So if you play in one of these terrible leagues that includes kickers, you might want to think about not playing Josh Lambo because he might not play. That's analysis for you. I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck in Week 15. And remember to subscribe to all of the audio feeds, all of the video feeds, and I'll be back live 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday morning with Gary and The Cust. And vote for that video for Video of the Year. FSTA.org/vote video. Good luck in Week 15. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!